written for me. They come from my faith, from the heart. And I think that we need more leaders up here in Washington who are led by God, not by what's going to get them reelected or get them on the news or are going to help them to fundraise. Because see, here's the fact: godly people are being called every day, but they're just not answering the call. And there's a reason for that. It's because in this political environment, I mean, sometimes the risk, y'all, they're just too high. I mean, if you campaign on your beliefs, they're going to make up lies. They're going to try to destroy your business. They're even going to threaten you and your family's life out there. At the end of the day, they want you to break. They want you to bow down. They know they can attack the man. But let me tell you something. They can't attack his faith in the Lord. And the fact is, y'all, we need more godly men and women to serve. To just take an example. I know Mac mentioned a little bit of it, but just take an example of what Georgia is up against. I mean, y'all, we've got a fight on our hands. We have a U.S. Senator, Jon Ossoff, who wants you to look to the government for every answer instead of your faith and in the Lord, which is the way I was taught. We have a senator who will take to the pulpit on Sunday to spew hatred and lies and push segregated gerrymandering. And yeah, he didn't vote just once. He voted twice. Then he voted a third time to allow men to compete in girls' sports. He co-sponsored legislation to allow men to use women's restrooms. And then he pushed to allow men to be admitted into women's domestic violence shelters. And when Jon Ossoff had the opportunity to help our shared constituent, Lakin Riley, he voted no. Now, yeah, he finally came around the second time. But let me tell y'all something. When I was in his office talking to him about how this little old common sense 3-4 page piece of legislation could help ensure that no other Georgia family would lose a son or daughter the way Lakin's family did, he just sat there and did nothing. I tell you what, it showed its true colors that day. Georgia needs a U.S. Senator whose life has been rooted in service and Georgia values. Not one that's going to bow down to the woke mob or refuse to stand up for what's right. Someone that just knows what it's like. Someone that knows what it's like to sign the front and the back of a paycheck. That helps families put food on their tables and provide for their families. That can take Georgia values of hard work, honesty, integrity, and a solutions-based approach to Washington, D.C. to just get things done. That's exactly what I've done. And getting 2 pieces of legislation passed, signed into law by 2 different presidents, 2 different parties in just 2 years, and in a bipartisan fashion. You see, I've shown that you can go to Washington, D.C. and put your constituents first, not your California and New York donors. And I'm going to leave you with this. In every vote that I've taken, every vote, I don't look to the D.C. lobbyists. I don't look to the D.C. insiders. I don't look to the media. I look to my faith and I look to the Lord. Y'all, it's an honor to speak with you this morning. I appreciate what you do for our country. It's an honor to serve. It really is. It's a privilege of a lifetime, and I look forward to continuing doing that. Thank you for having me. Y'all have a great day. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the pastor of Dreams United Church in Plant City, Florida, Bishop Kelvin Koberis.
Good morning, everyone. It is an honor to be with you at the Road to Majority Conference, celebrating this America 250 gathering. as we celebrate not just where our nation has been, but where, by the grace of God, through faithful citizens, it is going. 250 years ago, ordinary men and women did extraordinary things because they believed freedom was worth fighting for. Truth was worth defending, and future generations were worth sacrificing for. They faced impossible odds. They endured hardships. They suffered setbacks. They refused to surrender. And history remembers them not because life was easy, but because they pressed forward and they persevered. The same spirit is needed today. Our challenges may look different, but the calling is the same. Every generation must decide whether it will preserve liberty or permit it to disappear. Freedom is never inherited automatically. It must be cultivated, protected, and courageously defended. Today, I'd like to leave you with 3 simple reminders. Number 1, patriots possess purpose. Patriotism is far more than waving a flag or singing the national anthem. It is an understanding that God has entrusted each generation with a purpose. Purpose gives ordinary people extraordinary endurance. And the founders were not perfect, but they possess conviction. They believe that rights come from our Creator, not from government, and that governments exist to secure those rights, not to grant them. When you know your purpose, obstacles become opportunities. When you know why you're standing, you're less likely to fall. America does not simply need more opinions. America needs more people with purpose. People willing to serve. People willing to lead. People willing to sacrifice, because purpose always outlasts popularity. Secondly, patriots press through pressure. Every generation encounters pressure. Pressure to compromise, pressure to stay silent, pressure to conform, pressure to believe that one voice cannot make a difference. But history tells us a different story. The greatest advances in liberty came because courageous people kept pressing despite opposition. George Washington endured brutal winters. The signers of the Declaration risked everything, their fortunes, their families, and even their lives. They understood something we must remember. Comfort has never changed history, but rather conviction has. The road to freedom has always required resilience. When criticism comes, press on. When discouragement comes, press on. When the culture says give up, faithful patriots answer, we will not quit. Because all perseverance produces victories that quitting never will. I can recall back in the first administration of President Trump, when I was in my community handling social activism and speaking to the issues of the community of Central Florida, I found myself in a room with Pastor Paula White, who you just heard from, who's a dear friend of mine. And when I came to that room with her to address some of our community issues, she said to me, Bishop, America needs your voice because you are a voice to the nation. And she said to me, will you join me at the White House? I said, well, why in the world would I go to the White House to pontificate and placate with all of the evangelicals there? I want to go and make a difference. I was assuming that they were just there and just having some talks and some meetings, not realizing that they were the movers and shakers in the back room. When I got that invitation, I paused for a moment simply because I was afraid of the kickback that I was going to get from my African American community for standing for what I felt convicted by. So I paused for a moment and said, no, I'm not going to the White House with you, because if I go to the White House, I'll lose my black card, I'll lose my barbecue card, and I won't be able to go to the fish fry on Friday. So as I began to stand in a moment of fear, the Lord spoke to me and said, this is a window I'm giving you. This is a moment that I've established for the voice that I've anointed you to have. He said, go in. And so I took the invitation and went to the White House, sat around the room with all of the evangelicals, and President Trump called over and said, who's in the room? Bring them all to the Oval Office. Who goes to the White House for the first day and meet the president when you are not on the schedule to do that? However, that's how God said it. All of the evangelicals in the room were excited to go see President Trump. And it's not that I didn't want to go see President Trump. I didn't want to deal with the kickback coming from my community for standing in the room. So I froze in timidity, and I talked about maybe I should not go in there. And I heard that still small voice come from heaven again. And God said, this is the window of opportunity that I have given you to use your voice for the glory of God. And I found myself talking back to God in that moment. And I said, well, Lord, if I go in that room, I'm going to lose my black card. I'm going to lose my barbecue card, and I won't be able to go to the fish fry anymore. God spoke to me and said to me, do you want to be their friend or my friend? I said, I want to be a friend of God. And since I wanted to be a friend of God, he said, go in the Oval Office and do what I say. When I went into the Oval Office, I spoke with President Trump, had the opportunity in that moment to pray over President Trump. And before I could get home, they were already canceling me, calling me Uncle Tom, calling me everything but what my mother named me. But in the midst of all of that, the courage that God gave me to stand, gave me the tenacity against the odds to go against no matter what anyone said about me, to stand on the truth that I believe would transcend time. I went to my congregation on Sunday morning, and many of them row by row walked out of my church, emptied my church, saying that we will not stand with a man that will stand with the likes of President Trump. And I want you to know, in the midst of tears, God said, now I'm going to show you the blessing behind closed doors. And while this door may have been closed, I am elevating you to the nations so that I give you platforms to stand on and speak the truth of what you believe. Speak the truth about my word. Speak the truth about morals. Speak the truth about values. Speak the truth about family. And I'm here to tell you, they did everything to counsel me. But here I am standing here today, standing as a man of courage, standing in victory, standing in my faith, standing on the promises of God. Because to be a true American patriot, it requires courage. And my question to you is, what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of criticism? Are you afraid of defamation? Are you afraid of losing some family members? Are you afraid of losing some so-called friends? That is not important. What is important is, at the end of the day, when you stand before our Creator, when you stand before our final judge, when he judges you for done. So today I stand with courage. And the third point I want to lift is that patriots pass on principles. America 250 is not merely about celebrating the past. It's about preparing the future. What we celebrate today must become what we pass on tomorrow. Our children and grandchildren are watching. They are learning what we value. They will inherit either our courage or our complacency. So let us intentionally pass on a timeless principle of faith, freedom, personal responsibility, character, and service. If somebody asks me my why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you going in rooms that you're going in? Why are you praying over presidents and parliaments? Why are you putting your life on the line, your character, your reputation on the line? I have a 15-year-old at home, an 11-year-old at home, and Kelsey and Kyla is my why. I want to hand them an America that don't have to fight with boys trying to be in girls' bathroom. I want to hand them an America that don't don't have to fight with men trying to play in girls' sports. I want to give them America that don't have men in love with women and women in love with men. I want to give them an America that stands for moral values, that stands for traditional marriage, that stands for righteousness, that stands for what we've been founded upon. I want to give them an America that stands for freedom, stands for righteousness, and stand against the booze. You can boo, but you won't stop me. I'm here to tell you, you can fight against it, but you won't stop us. We stand for what is right. And if you don't like American freedom, if you don't like the way our country is going, find the nearest airport and fly out and go somewhere else. But in God we trust, the land of the free, the home of the brave. So today, as I come to my conclusion, I come to this conclusion to remind you today that God has not given us the spirit of timidity, but He has given us power, love, and self-control. And I'm here to tell you, this is not the hour to cave in. This is not the hour to become afraid. This is not the hour to be worried about the boos and those who try to counsel you on social media. This is not the hour to be concerned about your enemy. But this is the hour to stand in courage, to stand in power, to stand in influence, to stand in authority, and uphold not only the Declaration of Independence, but uphold the Word of God, because on Christ, the solid rock, we stand. All other ground is sinking sand. We have a midterm in front of us. We celebrate the victories of the past, but we've got work to do. We've got people at home that's being distorted, confused, and all caught up in all types of deception and lies based upon the things that they hear on the media and the propaganda of the different activists and groups that are trying to turn us against our foundation. However, because we know what truth is, because we know who God is, God will hold every one of us in here responsible if we come to Washington just to have a good time, just to have a few glass of teas and get a few numbers and network. We are not here just to have a good time. We are here to be stirred up in our convictions, stirred up in our character, stirred up in everything that we believe in, so that when we go back home, we're not just waiting on the party. We're not just waiting on the strategists, but in our own communities, we'll knock on doors. In the marketplace, we'll influence everybody we know. Everywhere in our church and everywhere around us, we will do everything that we possibly can to uphold the American dream, to remind people of the foundations of America. America was founded on Christian Judeo principles. And I'm here to tell you, I don't care where people come from, what country they come from, but as for me and my house, as for me and my country, we will serve the Lord. When I've traveled to Dubai, I had to do it Islam's way. When I traveled to other countries, I had to do it their religious way. So why, when people come to America, we're allowing them to dictate our way? If we are a Christian nation, we should vote and stand on Christian values. If we are a Christian nation, we should uphold the truth of the Word of God. If we are a Christian nation, stop bowing to the plan of the enemy. Thank you. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage, Ralph Reed.
Can you hear me? I just wish that Kelvin would come out of his shell a little bit so that we knew where he stood. I am so honored to have this next speaker. You're going to love this man. He served our country in the U.S. military. He's the first Special Forces officer ever elected to the U.S. House. He was raised by a single mother, born in Boynton Beach, Florida, raised in Jacksonville, ran for Congress in 2018, was tapped by Donald Trump to be his first national security advisor in this term, and is now representing us in a very tough neighborhood, the United Nations. Standing for us every day, would you please welcome a dear friend of mine, of the President's, and of this organization, Mike Waltz, our ambassador to the United Nations. You know, Mike, you served, were you a Ranger?
Ranger and Green Beret.
Ranger and Green Beret.
That's right. Yeah.
Very impressive. You served multiple tours of duty.
That's right.
In Africa, in the Middle East, in Afghanistan. You saw evil face to face. And you understand in a way that many do not.
Yeah.
That we are facing evil in every corner of this globe. Could you talk about what you learned in your military service and how you have taken that into your public and diplomatic service?
Well, thank you, Ralph, and good to be with you, and thank you all for being such a fighter and truly standing strong for our faith and for our freedom as we celebrate our 250th anniversary as a nation, and that our founding fathers did this revolutionary thing of our freedoms and our rights don't come from emperors or czars or kings or queens. They come from God. And we will, whether it's on the world stage or out in the Middle East or wherever, we have to fight for that. And I guess to your point, that I just want everybody to hear loud and clear, that we can't ever forget, evil exists in this world. And it has to be fought, and it has to be called out for what it is, and it has to be defeated. And whether that's in the polite circles of the UN or out on the battlefield, that is what we face. And you know, Ralph, what's unique about having me as a soldier now representing the United States on the world stage at the United Nations, I've seen that evil. I've seen folks, not to be too kind of doom and gloom here, but we need to be reminded. I have seen a 7-year-old boy, hung by the Taliban because his family refused to serve him up to go fight the Americans. I've seen young girls in Nigeria kidnapped out of their schools and sold into sex slavery as ISIS brides, forced to forswear Jesus Christ as their God, and forced to convert, and then forced into sex slavery. We were able to go rescue some of those girls, but not massacre 40,000 people in a weekend. In a weekend. These are the types of regimes that we're facing, and it's even bigger than that. We're seeing the Chinese Communist Party literally reinterpret and retranslate the Bible and talk about the primacy of the state and the Pharisees over Jesus, and propagate that all over the world. So I just wanted to come here today and let you know that you have a fighter in me, you have a fighter in Secretary of State Rubio, you have a fighter in Vice President Vance, and you definitely have a fighter in President Donald J. Trump.
Yes, we do. And by the way, I would commend to all of you, I got an opportunity, I guess it was during the transition, it was an event at the Museum of the Bible for your book, and I got an opportunity to read your book, and I commend it to all of you. that where Mike talks about his experiences in the military and how it shaped and formed him. And you know, as you were talking, Mike, I'm reminded of Ronald Reagan's very famous address to the National Association of Evangelicals in 1983, where he said, "We are called as men and women of faith to combat evil. Right? We cannot sit on the sidelines and just enjoy saying, well, both sides have a good argument." Now, that was when
evil thrives when good men and women do nothing, right?
And at that time, he was talking about Soviet communism. Nobody knew the Berlin Wall would fall. Nobody knew the Soviet Union would disintegrate. And my question to you is, it's a very different time in many ways, and yet not. I mean, you've got Russia, you've got China, you've got Iran, you've got North Korea. What does that call?
We have a revival of communism right here in the United States. I'm living in it in Manhattan.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
What does it mean for us as men and women of faith to combat evil today? Where clearly, you mentioned some of the examples, but Reagan had a vision that, as he famously said, they lose, we win. Mm-hmm. What does it look like for us?
Well, what Reagan, historically did was stop saying we're going to contain, or what they called then détente, kind of live alongside and manage, and said, no, we're going to win. We are good, our values are right and righteous, and we are going to win in this entity using every element of national power, economic, diplomatic, informational, military, and he did, because he was right. Our values, and so allies, like-mindeds and others that share our values, I think, are who we need to embrace. And again, we need to stand strong, whether that is in your community, in our country, or around the world. We need to support people who stand for our values. And I just want to tell you, in the place where I am, case in point, there's an organization called the Human Rights Council that thankfully President Trump has said we're done, we're walking away from, and not a single dollar of your taxpayer dollars are going to support this kind of nonsense anymore. This council has passed 171 resolutions against Israel, compared to 51 against all of the other countries around the world combined. They have things like a George Floyd Commission that literally had UN bureaucrats under the last administration coming into our prisons and deciding, with the likes of Venezuela and Cuba and North Korea and others, opining on our criminal justice system. I mean, it's laughable if it wasn't so serious. So what we've done and what we're doing is, number one, we forced this organization to take its first budget cut in its entire history. We're putting the UN on a diet. We made them cut $500 million out, and we're going to keep going. They cut 3,000 bureaucrats out of that building up in New York, and we're walking away from these organizations like the World Health Organization or the so-called Human Rights Organization or others that are going to infringe on our sovereignty, our rights, and our freedoms. And so I just, again, I want you all to hear that loud and clear. There are some nuggets of decent elements in there. Burden sharing, for example, there's gangs that have taken over Haiti. I don't want to see UN troops down there. American troops down there. You now have UN troops down there. Gaza and the president's 20-point peace plan. That is now being enacted with other partners. So there are some things that we need, but Lord, pray for us. We are determined to clean that place up and make it work for you all, not us for them.
Well, it's about time. Now, another area of reform, and I'm not an expert on it, but I've heard that the UN peacekeeping contingents that are sent around the world
cut by 25%.
Yeah, often,
and we'll keep going.
Are very ineffective, and
They
they don't really do a very good job at all of keeping the peace. So, How are we going to do that? Are we going to do that like we're attempting to do in Gaza, where we bring together allies that can actually put together a force?
That's right. No, that's absolutely right. We're going to keep them focused. They're going to tie it to a political process. You are there to keep the peace, which means you have to have a political process to put peace in place, and then you work yourself out of the job and you shut the thing down, and that's exactly what we're doing. The first one we're going to shut down this year is the peacekeeping force in southern Lebanon that's been there for 20 years at the cost of $500 million a year and has done everything but keep the peace. So
Right.
we're shutting them down where they aren't effective, and then where they are working for the United States, then we'll work with them.
Now, speaking of keeping the peace, you are a former counterterrorism advisor to two different secretaries of defense.
Mm-hmm.
You know a little bit about counterterrorism and about the threat of terrorism.
Yeah.
We have just completed and are currently in negotiations with the leading state sponsor of terror in the world, Iran.
Right.
Brilliant military operation. We now have a memorandum of understanding, and the president's diplomatic team is doing everything they can to arrive at a deal. What do you think is achievable? What are the main goals? What are the objectives? And what are the possibilities of ensuring that the most dangerous regime in the world does not obtain the most dangerous weapons known to man?
Well, I want everyone to hear this loud and clear. The president campaigned on no endless wars. As a veteran, my wife was a veteran of Iraq. I'm a veteran of Afghanistan. We saw that policy drift. It's one of the reasons I ran for office, so that we never have that again. He has achieved many, if not all, of his goals. The Iranian nuclear program was devastated last June. They decided to start to rebuild, and the president hit him again. Their leadership's devastated, their military's devastated, their economy is devastated. Now this process, I mean, we could probably spend a whole hour on this, but now the process is how to lock that in. But I assure you, we know who we're dealing with, and that's how I started this talk. In understanding and with clear eyes what we're dealing with. There is no trust and all verify, and now this is a process to lock those gains in. Gas prices are already back to where they were pre-war. The president has to balance our economy and the global economy. At the same time, he is ensuring that a genocidal, Islamic, revolutionary regime, dictatorship, can never, ever, ever threaten you, threaten the United States, or threaten Israel or the region with a nuclear weapon. And that is, he is doing what presidents before him have refused to do and have kicked the can on year after year after year. President Donald J. Trump is here to solve these problems, whether it's Venezuela, the southern border, the threats against the terrorist threats against our great ally Israel, or Iran chasing a nuke. I could keep going down the list. He is here to solve these problems using all means necessary, and it's the honor of my life to pull up a chair behind a placard that says United States of America and implement his America First foreign policy.
Outstanding.
All right.
Well, Mike, I concur with everything you just said. I trust the president's instincts.
You should.
I trust his judgment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know him, you know him. He's not going to make a bad deal. He's always going to put America first. And we are so glad that you were there by his side. Thank you for enduring the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune that comes from sitting
Combat over there, or
at the
combat
United
up there,
Nations.
yeah. Well,